Chayim.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And welcome to another beautiful Florida Sunday, another Friday where the COVID numbers continue to increase locally. And yes, unfortunately, folks, if you're listening to this, we have decided to not offer the large venue open. We have a Zoom link for those who have registered and want to join us on Zoom. And we'll have a small group, vaccinated and masked, in the sanctuary. So we'll be part live, part recorded, doing things to try to help mitigate the situation as best we can. And you know, there's actually a Jewish edict, a Jewish morality issue of you don't endanger the public unnecessarily if there's an alternative. And thanks to Zoom and thanks to the vaccine, there are alternatives. The major movements within Judaism have all come out and said that getting vaccinated is the Jewish thing to do.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so
that's
it's
good news.
Yeah, because the idea is that you take care of the community. Judaism fully understands the idea that the Christian reference to the sheep and the goats coming from Jewish scriptures is about the responsibility for all these sheep, for all the goats. You're not just responsible for yourself. It's not that billy goats go off and do their own thing. It's that you do what's good for the herd because the group is what matters. You know, in fact, we're coming up to the holidays where that's very much pointed out. The liturgy around the High Holy Day season is Asham Nu. We have sinned. Al chet shechatanu, that the sin that we have sinned before you, God, by doing this. And so we confess as a community all of the things that any member of our community might have done and for which we are truly repentant.
And I think the difference, at least that I can see, is that you're confessing directly to God.
Yes.
Where
we're not asking anybody to do anything for us. We're
the
saying
Catholic religion, you're confessing to a priest.
Right. Well, and right, the idea of Yom Kippur, and that's why so much is done in preparation. In many communities, maybe not most, but many people will have actually gone to mikveh in an effort to make themselves as spiritually clean as they can before coming in front of God and saying, I was perfectly human this year and my failings were X, Y, and Z. And there's a power in owning your stuff. There's a real power in that brings you to a very different place in life. And that's a very Jewish thing. We're not supposed to think that we're infallible, and the people who can't be wrong are challenged, because the reality is we all have been wrong multiple times a day, let alone in a year.
Well, speak for yourself.
I understand. And I do for the community. There's actually a very special prayer that the prayer leaders say before stepping in front of the congregation to pray, acknowledging that the congregation is far from perfect, and that you as a service leader are representing a group, and you yourself are flawed. Both in so doing and right, there's many layers to this. Right, so it's the imperfect with the imperfect, and there's just a power in recognizing in recognizing that and in dealing with it. So that's a big part of this holiday, right? Al Checha Chatzano. And I always think back to it when I was a student rabbi in Cleveland. We were having a session talking about the High Holy Day season, and one of the members of the congregation said, why do we keep repeating for the sin that we've sinned before you doing this, and for the sin da-da-da-da? Why do we do it 7 times during the service? I'd have to sit down and count how many times it's done, but it's done multiple times during the day. And I'm trying to fashion this wonderful rabbinic answer when the woman who was president of the congregation chimes in and yells out, because it takes that many times to convince you that you have.
I love it.
I sat there going, okay, that's as good an answer as I could possibly come up with.
Okay, yeah, that works for me.
That's as much as I could possibly come up with. So, yeah.
Well, it's good that you've done what you did earlier this week as far as moving things, obviously, back to the temple, and then also virtual, because, yeah, this thing's getting crazy again.
Yeah, and I want to, so much I want to thank St. Andrews. And,
they're nice folks.
They're very nice folks. It's a wonderful facility. And candidly, I can't picture that many people wanting to be in person with the COVID numbers the way they are. You can see it everywhere, that the numbers of people who are out and about. We haven't been shut down, but we are shutting ourselves a little bit and recognizing it. And I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and they had to cancel I'd made an appointment for them somewhere else. I was facilitating something, and the woman said to me, my dad just was diagnosed with COVID double pneumonia.
Oh.
So, not herself, but her father, actually. And, today, as you pointed out, I think you said that last week, that one of the big differences that we have now is that not only do we hear of people, but we actually know people who've been infected, who have, in fact, passed. I had some family members in New York who'd passed early from COVID, so it was perhaps more real in some ways. My colleague in Tucson, a vaccinated rabbi, contracted COVID from an unvaccinated person who came to see him. So, it's happening. The vaccine helps, and as you've pointed out with the flu vaccine, just getting the vaccine doesn't mean you're immune. It just means you're more immune. So, how
you may get it, but it'll be a lesser version.
Yeah, it should be less.
Yeah.
It should be less.
Yeah.
Strange. So.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, technology
Looks
is ever
like
doing
Facebook
its
is
thing.
acting up again.
Facebook is acting up. Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Never a dull moment. So, yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but
you can watch a complete show on YouTube.
Absolutely.
After we're off here.
Right, and it confirms that it is streaming. So, folks, we are here. We are live, and I hope that it works for everyone.
Sure.
It's acting nicely today. It's being friendly. It's just apparently Facebook. Facebook doesn't always send out its notices, so oh well.
There you go.
Yeah. What can I do? I know why it is. It's because I went to my profile first and then to the temple, and often I go the other direction. Okay.
Don't try and fool Facebook.
No, you can't play with Facebook. Facebook rules. So.
Okay, so again, services at the temple.
Services live at the temple if you've registered, if you are vaccinated and wearing a mask. I will be both shielded and masked. Normally I'm just shielded for a Friday night, but we're going to be probably a little denser, and so masks are highly appropriate. And I'm a firm believer in modeling the behavior. And Sharon has joined us on the Facebook stream, and I want to thank her because she introduced me to something that I have found very helpful, both for teaching and for rabbiing. You like how I made that a verb?
Rabbiing?
Yeah, you like that verb?
Oh, I've never heard that before.
That's what an English rabbiing.
Yeah.
Well, if a minister can minister, then a rabbi can rabbi.
That's your English teacher just jumped out a window, by the way.
Okay. And then what that is a company that makes what's called a choir or a teacher mask. And it's made slightly differently from other masks. It's got more mouth space. It's got an extra layer of fabric to really try to stop somebody that it knows is going to be orating, if you will, speaking loudly or singing, from putting droplets out. So, yeah.
Well, I've decided I'm going to wear my shield for the high school football this year.
There's no choice. Like I said, the numbers are still going the wrong direction. And
yeah, because my booster will not come up until early November, I think. So, yeah, I've got a whole season of high school football to go.
Well, hopefully your body learned what it needed to learn from the vaccine. That's the point of the vaccine. All right. The vaccine, for anybody who hasn't looked at them and researched them, because the information's out there, it does not have any corona in it, not killed, not live. So there's no way to get the virus from it. What it does is it trains your T cells on how to recognize and combat a coronavirus. And the question is whether or not your immune system has learned the lesson well enough. And the booster shot is what it says. It's just to boost the learning. It's to give them a dry run. Right? We don't do anything important without practicing it once or twice or three times. And the same is true. The vaccine teaches your body what a coronavirus looks like and how to deal with it. That's what it's for. It's done at a cellular level. Vaccines are not new. Vaccines have helped us with smallpox and polio. You don't hear of those childhood diseases anywhere near. Mothers used to be afraid to let their kids swim for fear that polio would be spread.
Oh, I remember those days. Yeah.
And in fact, it was spread, but not by the water, not by the swimming. We have actually learned that it was spread both by aerosols and by flies, of all crazy things, that would go from person to person. There was a fly addition if you look at the polio research. The common housefly contributed to the spread of polio. And if you've got a bunch of people eating and drinking at a poolside, not that they're eating hot dogs or anything, but whatever it is that they're doing, it's the kind of thing, all of the sweat and those wonderful human things are going to attract flies.
Yeah, when we were working in San Diego, of course, the Salk Institute was there, and boy, they do such good work.
Yeah, people have, unless you've really watched some documentaries or been inside one of these virus research centers, you come to realize that they take tremendous precautions. They err very much on the side of being safe, with full hazmat suits and all kinds of double locks and air locks and special anti leakage, right, sanitation or sterilization kinds of procedures, so that they can study it. And here's the 6 degrees of whatever. One of the people from my old Tucson neighborhood that I still have some contact with through the neighborhood, there's a neighborhood network there that I'm still part of, and he actually was in Wuhan at that center the summer before, excuse me, through the University of Arizona, which has a joint program with them. That's another thing people don't realize. These labs do not operate independently and as an island.
Right.
They operate as part of consortiums and scientists come and go between all of them. And one of the interesting sidebars out of his having been there this summer before was when COVID broke, when it started to occur. He actually, one of his colleagues in Wuhan forwarded him the China protocol.
Ooh.
In English, the English version of it. And he actually forwarded that on out. And I actually read that way back when. Gosh, over a year ago now.
So it would have been, he would have been there in what, 2018, right?
No, 2019, but before it.
Okay.
Just months before it broke.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And, who knows? How many times normally do you get, quote unquote, the crud, and you feel lousy for a couple of days and it's over? And, unless you get a test and culture whatever it is that's causing you to feel the crud, you don't really know what it is that caused it. It could have been a coronavirus. The coronavirus, if you do any research, you know that that's a whole family of viruses. It's what's novel about COVID-19 is that it's that particular form of a coronavirus. The coronavirus is the source of our everyday cold, which, because it's not as lethal, it's highly contagious, but it's not that lethal, and so it's annoying more than anything else.
Of course, now we have to worry, according to CNBC, about Mu.
Yeah.
Which is yet another version of the corona.
And so, and it's going to continue to mutate as it tries. Oddly enough, there are two things that a virus wants to do. A virus wants to multiply, hence it tries to become contagious. And it actually doesn't want to kill its host because that doesn't help it multiply. Right. So what's interesting about bats, for example, is that bats can live diseased for years because they can host a virus and not get its symptoms and not die from it, but it helps that particular virus propagate. Humans don't have that evolutionary response to that particular virus. We have it to other viruses. We do have viruses living in and on our body all the time. We have bacteria living in and on our body. And until you're really immunocompromised, you're able to fight those things off very easily. And they're there. And that's one of the dangers when people become immunocompromised, is they then become subject to many of the things that are in and around us. And
that's why it's important to wash your hands once a week.
Absolutely. And take a probiotic so you can have the healthy bacteria. Eat yogurt. It puts the healthy bacteria in your system.
Yep. Yeah.
Those are important, right? There are things called, probiotics, not antibiotics, but probiotics to put the healthy bacteria. And one of the reasons you need to do that, particularly if you've taken an antibiotic, because some of the antibiotics are a little too broad spectrum and they kill off the good bacteria that you in fact need to help you fight off the bad ones. As I was walking in, I was watching the dragonflies out in your front. You've got this little bevy of dragonflies that were out there today. And they're a very, very interesting insect. They have been around for millennia. The fossil record on them goes way, way back. The only thing they've done over the millennia is gotten a whole lot smaller. They used to be this big, and they're now little tiny things living on insects. And they have, here's an interesting tidbit. Thank you, Al, for sending me the documentary on it. Most predators have between a 20 and a 30% success rate. I'm going to guess the Harrises are higher. But most predators are only a quarter to a third successful. The dragonfly is in the high 90s. It's extremely successful. It's one of the few animals on the planet that can move each of its wings differently. much like the hummingbird can move its wings in a variety of
Yeah.
different ways.
Uh-huh.
It's an unusual bird, and that's why it can hover and do all those really cute, flitty hummingbird things.
Sure.
And if you've watched a dragonfly, they do many of the same kinds of moves. They'll hover, they'll swing, they'll move around, and they're famous for being able to spot their prey and maneuver into a position where the prey doesn't have an escape. And here's the good news, folks. They like to eat mosquitoes. So they're our friends.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, they like to eat lots of things that we don't like. And so, yeah, thank a dragonfly when you see it, because they're very, very hungry and eat lots of mosquitoes. They eat mosquitoes. Ladybugs eat bad bugs. They'll eat aphids and flies and things like that off your plants. That's why I use ladybugs in my garden. You can actually buy live ladybugs.
And no Roundup.
No, I do not use Roundup.
That's very
I do not use Roundup.
Very smart on your part.
To handle Roundup, scary. It can give you a really bad dose of cancer.
Sure.
And possibly. Let me couch that in all of the terms. I don't have certified knowledge of that, but boy, the research seems to indicate there's a connection. Let me couch it precisely, which is the other subject that I wanted to talk about. So before I do that, one quick internal commercial. Please do join us for the High Holy Days. If you'd like to join us on Zoom, please go to www.eitzchayim.org and click on the High Holy Day reservations and make your reservation. We'll send you out the Zoom link. If you'd like to be in the sanctuary, you're going to need to show us a vaccine. We will take temperatures and ask you to be masked. So we have some limited seating available in the sanctuary.
But you must be vaccinated,
Yeah.
right? Good.
So,
I think we all have to go that way.
it's...
there are some people out there that don't like it, but...
I hear you, but it's our movement has required it, so we're going to do that.
Yeah.
We're going to join with them and say we're going to be safe first. And, yeah. And I think Stuart actually talked about it real quickly, and then I'll go back to my precise speech thing. All right, which is that if you're not vaccinated and you're not masked, then you are endangering the lives of others. It's not about your life. We can talk about whether or not you can do risky behavior. There's actually a section of Talmud that deals with self-harming behaviors. So putting yourself at risk unnecessarily is not acceptable. And there's some recognition of how and what and all the things around it. So self-harming is not okay, but it's also not okay to put anybody else at risk. So it's not okay to blow smoke in somebody's face.
Right.
It's not okay to do something harmful to somebody. It's not okay to lie about what's in food and hurt somebody. It's just not okay. And that's the bottom line. You were going to ask something about Stuart.
Well, no, I was just kind of thinking of some of the aspects of being vaccinated versus non-vaccinated. And, it's just, I know some of these people have turned this into such a political issue. It's a health issue.
It's a health issue.
That's
it's a
not
health
political.
issue.
That is not political.
And, I truly do not remember anywhere near this kind of resistance to the kids' vaccines that are required for school. Right? You have to have polio and you have to have smallpox to go to school. And the study that said that it had any links to anything has been debunked, folks. It's been shown to be fraudulent. And so the people who perpetuate saying, that there are dangers are in many ways folks that have a problem admitting they can change their mind and not be wrong. You don't change who you are by changing your mind. You don't make yourself wrong by changing your mind with new information. And I hope that helps some people. So the other topic that I was going to talk about was precise speech. because too many times, too many of us speak in code. Right? We'll say, for example, well, John was unprofessional. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean? It means different things to different people. And we use that kind of code speech many times to not name the elephant in the room, to not talk about the real issue and the real concerns, perhaps because we think that if we go into those, they're not as important, or somebody might take issue with them. So let's take the one of John is not professional. Does that mean that he shows up late? Does it mean he doesn't show up 10 minutes early to prepare everything and so he's rushing? Does it mean he wears a t-shirt instead of a button-down shirt? Does it mean he's wearing, a soft fabric polo like you are, as opposed to a shirt fabric? What does it mean? Does it mean he's sloppy with his paperwork? Does it mean you have to bug him 3 times to get him to follow up on something? What does that not professional mean?
Yeah, it's pretty broad.
It's very broad, and code speak usually is very broad. And just repeating it and saying, well, no, I said it. I said he's not professional. That does not answer what does not professional mean. So what can you do if somebody's doing code speak to you and you really do want to have the discussion and figure out what's going on and what the issue is? Then the easiest way I have found is to say to somebody, I'm a little confused. What do you mean by professional? Could you tell me in more detail what's making you say that? To try to, you don't want to be confrontational about it. And one of the things that I like to tell people, keep your pronouns to yourself. I'm confused. What do you mean by? Right? Because it is you that's confused. Yes, the person speaking in code speak, and yes, they have a right to do that. And you also have a right to understand what it is that they're trying to say, because better communication happens when both parties understand what's really being said. And it's not just a whole bunch of repeated ritualistic speech as opposed to actual detailed speech. And, I always have fun in my classes because I'll ask the students, I'll ask them how many of them are multilingual. And some of them will raise their hands, and there's a variety of other languages that people speak in the class, depending on where they come from, where their family comes from. And, I'll ask them, I'll say, can you take what I say in English and translate it word for word into your other language? And most of them will stop for a second and say, no, not quite. I have to change things in order to communicate the intention of your speech.
That happens a lot with us over on La Gigante, where, say, a car dealer is going to have this super duper something sale, and the slang.
Oh, especially slang.
is just brutal, trying to translate it to Spanish.
Yeah, I've been thinking recently about some of the Yiddish things. There's a wonderful, when you're telling somebody not to bother you and not to give you silliness. Right? It's Hakmernik Chinek. Don't break for me a teacup. And if you just translate that, no, you don't begin to get it.
It makes no sense. Okay.
Right. And so, every once in a while, though, a couple of students say, I can do that. I say, okay, translate for me, Jim is sharp. And then I get this look, because now they're not quite sure. What do I mean when I say Jim is sharp? Do I mean he's cutting in his speech? Do I mean he's dressed well? Do I mean he's smart? Because all of those meanings are not in one Spanish word, or not in one Creole word, or not in one Arabic word.
Sure.
But they're all bound together in the English words.
Our lovely English language.
Oh, yeah.
So easy to speak.
You know, he picked up a bow. What kind of a bow did he pick up? Did he pick up a bow to a cello? Did he pick up a big, pretty bow to put in your hair? What did he pick up? And did you mispronounce it? Did you really mean bow?
Yeah. That gets into a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As in, right. Or the other bow, right? A bow and arrow.
Or the bow of a ship.
The bow of a ship. Do I bow? I love English. We talked about that one, right, with the famous I Love Lucy, where she's trying to teach him how to read O-U-G-H.
And folks, if you have not seen that bit,
Look it up. Look it up on YouTube.
Go to YouTube. It is so funny.
Yeah. Look
You
up
will
Lucy
be
teaching
crying.
Desi to read O-U-G-H.
Yeah.
Yeah, you will cry by the time he's done.
It's-
He's going to cough. Yeah. It's cough, through, thorough.
Oh.
Yeah, all of the different pronunciations of O-U-G-H. Enough. You can think of them all. There's a great list that I have of sentences where the same spelling is pronounced multiple ways and
Yeah.
meaning different things.
Do your Chinese kids occasionally have problems with
Oh, yeah.
our
Yeah.
language?
Well, like, he read the story. He read the story. And it's particularly difficult for Chinese students because Chinese doesn't decline the verbs the same way. Not that I speak Chinese, but some of my students have explained that to me, that Chinese doesn't decline the verb. Instead, there's a word they put in to tell people that it's past tense. So if you word for word, it's yesterday I read a book. Right, whereas in English we would just say I read a book.
right.
And we'd spell it the same way.
Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of, because of the way people learn English, very often non-native speakers will inappropriately use the present tense for something. And using the right tense is really key to being fluent in any language. But, and if you think Chinese is easier because of that, do not think that, because they've got all kinds of tonal changes to the meanings of the word. And if you don't use the right up or down or voice, you have said something totally different from what you think you said.
We used to have a news director who told us, never use past tense. Only write your news copy in present tense. It's like...
That's not so easy.
And it was very difficult.
Yeah. I am reading that yesterday.
I know. Oh, well.
Yeah, especially since a lot of times in a newscast you do hear yesterday this or last month that, and those things certainly do belong in the past tense.
Sure.
Conversely, it's an interesting piece because I coach people in writing their dissertations as well. With writing theses and dissertations, it's one of my little sidebar things because I do 5 million things.
I was going to say.
But, right, so the dissertation is an interesting piece because when you first start writing it, you start with the proposed study will da-da-da-da-da be on this and that and whatever. And then as you get further into it, it's present tense, right? This study explores da-da-da-da. And then after you've done the research, you now have to go back through everything and change the current research studied. Right. And you have to be really careful because you can't say that a study does anything. It's the findings of the study that support or don't support. Yeah. Because the study doesn't tell this,
Okay.
the analysis of the research findings support or don't. You have to be very precise in language. And it's probably one of the reasons why I try to specify precise speech. It helps identify and make things more attached to their responsible people or responsible entities. Right? And you don't say, in research today, we don't say the researcher did this. We say I did this, or we did this. The APA has come out and said you will own what is yours, so there's no ambiguity. You're not talking about researchers doing something. You're talking about you doing something. And so you say I, we. Personal pronouns. And when it's appropriate, it's appropriate, and it's not unscholarly. You know, it's one of my pet peeves, the people who misuse me and I and he. You know, my friend and I went. It's not my friend and myself. It's my friend and I. You can say I went myself. That means you go yourself.
Sure.
But or to not say me. He gave it to myself. No, that's wrong. He gave it to me. It's okay to say me when it's grammatically correct. In fact, it's grammatically correct. Anything else is not. But I often see that because people have been taught to not say me or I, and so it's a little more challenging sometimes. And the point of telling kids to not say me or I is to not make it all about them. That's the point of that. But it's not explained to the child.
In the immortal words of Britney Spears. Oh, boy.
And then yeah. So we are coming on to the High Holy Day season. It is the 26th of the month of Elul, known as Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, as being the love connection between God and humanity. We are God's creation. It's not a hate. It's not a fear. It shouldn't be any of those things. It should be the beauty of the love that you would find between parent and child when it's healthy. And I'm going to say when it's healthy because there are far too many abusive relationships both ways. Right? Parents abuse children and children abuse parents. Now, part of that's learned, part of that's a number of things, but, elder abuse is unfortunately very common. There's actually a state organization to help protect seniors from abuse by their children.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
Because it's just too common. We discount sometimes the ones that we love the most or should love the most. So getting back to Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li, talks about the relationship. Jews and God, we refer to ourselves as partners with God. We work together with God to make the world as good as it can be. And I actually heard a wonderful...
Nice.
It's kind of interesting. One of the things that's been happening, I've talked about this other times, that I've been binge watching or sequential watching of NCIS, rather. And there was a wonderful quote that Gibbs ascribed to his father of, "The world is bad enough, don't make your section any worse." And that's kind of, if you will, a Jewish thing, right? The world has its problems, and our responsibility is to repair, correct, help, improve those situations. Here's the piece. Here's the double edge of that knife. What you think will be an improvement may or may not be. You need to really work at it, and it needs to honor God's creation. And so I'll go to Rabbi Daniel Siegel, and one of my favorite teachings of his is things are godly when you can really see God's spark in all of God's creatures. So when you think that you are smarter or better than everybody around you, that's your ego pretending to be God. The little g inside you.
The small g, yes.
The small g God inside you, right. But when you can see how wonderful all of God's creation is, then the odds are much greater. They're still not perfect, but the odds are better that what you're doing is moving in the right direction. And so it's not something where, you get to decide what's right, because God didn't give any one of us all of that knowledge. I don't believe that we come into the world, as Locke would have said, a tabula rasa, a blank slate. We've pretty much proven that that's not true. I think that one of the things that's really hardwired into us is a preference for how we learn, how our organism learns what it learns. And to me, the key is you'll go to seed when you stop learning. You know that about me. I love to learn. I love to learn all kinds of things. I learn by interacting with people. I learn from everything around me. But I do like to check things. Like Stuart said, it's not just reading the paragraph in front and behind, but maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs in front and behind and really see what the intent is. It's important. It's important to do fact checking.
Well, you've done so many things in your life that is absolutely fascinating that you wouldn't think would work hand in glove. Like your Goodyear background and and then now being a rabbi.
There's an interesting thread that runs in and amongst all of it. There's a value in the engineering training that I took. There's even a value in the crazy elective I took in undergrad when I first started college of quantum mechanics. I'd exhausted the math electives, so it was a long story.
Quantum
mechanics. Yeah.
I can't even spell it.
I can't spell all the things that are in it. And I love, of all of the maths, I love vector analysis. It's just fun to do vectors for me.
Wow.
Everybody's got different bends, and I haven't done it in a long time. But yeah, back in the day, you needed to do it more for computer stuff.
Sure.
And oh my gosh, I'd even forgotten about the computer science certificate. Never mind.
To go along with the doctorates and the masters. Yeah.
I love to learn. There's always more to learn. There's so much in the world to learn about. And
do your students teach you anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Any teacher worth their salt will tell you they learn as much or more than they teach. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. It's an ongoing reality check to watch how the students understand both what you say and what they read. And I when the discussions get going, and the students complain about, there's a discussion every week. Yeah, there's a discussion every week, and but when they get going, oh my gosh, the students do such a wonderful job of bringing in their prior knowledge and side things. I spend a ton of time researching things that they'll say and checking them, and yeah. Sharon just posted on Facebook, the day I don't learn from my students, I will be gone.
Oh, I like that. That's nice.
Right, so.
Good job, Sharon. Yeah.
You learn so much from your students, and they ask really great questions. I can, one of the things that my husband Bill likes to bring up, back when I was flight instructing, and he was in my ground school. I used to teach the ground school classes in North Canton, Ohio, way back when, at a place called wasn't McKinley Air, it was there were 2 schools that were owned by the same people, 2 different spots on the same airport. And I usually taught at McKinley. I taught flight at McKinley Air, and I taught ground school at the other one, and I can't remember what its name is now. But anyway, sorry about that, Armin. Armin was my boss. Anyway, I was teaching ground school, and I was talking about how the turbulence at the back of the wing, and this is actually why I went back to school and got an engineering degree, but it's one of the things that I couldn't explain. Behind a large airplane, there's a vortex of air that comes up from the bottom of the wing and curls up over onto the top of the wing and creates a spiral called wake turbulence.
Okay.
It's
that
not
sort
a-
of makes sense. Yeah.
It does make sense because the reason the plane has lift is because of low pressure on top of the wing. See what an engineering degree does for you? Allows you to explain that. So it's the difference in air pressure below and above the wing. How big that creates determines how high, etc., the airplane will go. And it's balancing that against the weight of the airplane and a whole bunch of other things going on. But around big, heavy airplanes, it creates wake turbulence. And the wake turbulence sinks. It drops at about 100 feet a minute. So if you're flying behind a large aircraft, it's important to be above the wake turbulence of that aircraft, or you're going to get caught in that vortex because it's got a lot of energy. And one of the students in the class looked up at me and says, "Why does it sink?" And at the time, I had no idea. And I'm the kind of teacher, when you ask me a question and I have no idea, you get the blank stare for a second, and then I'll say, I will have to look that up and get back to you.
Hit the books.
Yep, I will have to hit the books. And when I couldn't find a good answer in any of the flight books is when I said, okay, I need to go and learn some engineering so I can understand the semi-mass effect of the wake turbulence. The density of it makes it heavier than the surrounding air, and because it's got this energy associated with it, this inertia, it drops, it sinks.
So that one question got you into
Well, no, it wasn't just that one. That one, and
kind of pushed you in there.
It helped push me. It was like the final piece. The one that started it was this line in the flight books that said that the reason that the airplane flies is because these two molecules of air at the front of the wing, when they meet at the back of the wing, one has had to go faster because there's more wing surface. And the logical brain in my head said, there's no reason for two molecules to have to meet again. They're not married. There's nothing to bring them back together.
Okay.
Okay, so that clearly, and the reason for the difference in speed over the top versus over the bottom is Bernoulli's principle. It's the air that's not affected, and the wing condenses and things go faster. It's the same reason why when you hold the end of a hose and clip it so that it's a smaller space, it goes faster, because the water's got pressure to come out, and the smaller the space is for it to go through, the faster it's got to go to get through without jamming up. That's Bernoulli's principle.
Woohoo. Okay.
Yeah, that's the real reason airplanes fly, folks. If you want to test it, just take any piece of paper and hold it up to your lip, let it just be free flowing. I would show it here if I had, and blow on it. Yeah, that right, like Cliff is doing it right now.
Yeah.
It brings the paper
I'm not
up
surprised.
when you blow on it. If you've got a sheet over there, I'll show it to my Facebook folks, and they can see it, and you'll see it on the YouTube for Ask a Rabbi as well. So yeah, any piece of paper, you can take it, and you can hold it down like this under your lip, and if you blow on it, you actually bring it up.
Yeah, and it raises up a little bit.
Right, you've got to be right over it, but it'll come up.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Okay.
Right, I always love doing that with kids. Blow on it, and you can see it start to come up. If you hold it just right underneath your lips, so that you're blowing, if you will, you're blowing the air over the top of it, between it and the top. Bernoulli's principle. And that's useful. It's a recognition that things are logical. They may not be what we first think. Right? So airplanes are actually pulled up, if you will, not pushed up. And those the kinds of things sometimes matter. Understanding. And you and I have talked about, right, when you put your hand on a cold window or something, it's not that cold energy is coming into you, it's that the heat energy is leaving you, and the nerves in your body say, I'm cold.
Right.
Right, because it notices the sudden drop in temperature as the heat energy leaves you and goes to whatever, to the ice cube to melt it, to the ice cream in your hand to drip, but whatever. That's heat transfer away, and that's why cool things cool us down. It takes the heat out of our bodies.
Terrible you mentioned ice cream at lunchtime.
Sorry about that. Have something healthy, folks.
It's a weakness.
So Rosh Hashanah services are this weekend, and I want to wish everybody a happy Labor Day weekend. Be safe and enjoy and distance and wash your hands. Let's not create another spike on top of the spike, folks, please. Let's do this safely. And Rosh Hashanah is next week, and then the following week toward the end is Yom Kippur. If you'd like to register for our services, please go to www.eitzchayim.org. And if anybody's wondering why my eyes keep flipping over the different places, it's because YouTube cameras are up there, Mevo's up there, and my monitor's down here. So, and the other monitor's over there. So, yeah, I've got this big audience of one.
When we get 3 or 4 more new cameras, they will really confuse folks.
Yeah. and eventually, I'm hoping to get a second Mevo for the sanctuary as well.
Yeah.
So that we can do some more interesting things there. This is as good a time as any to say, if you'd like to sponsor one or more of the Ask a Rabbis, if this has been interesting to you and worth listening to, please consider sponsoring, and we'll gladly mention your product and your company, your cause. And please consider that. Call 772-340-1590, 772-340-1590. And you can talk to anybody who answers the phone here and tell them you'd like to sponsor one or more segments of Ask a Rabbi. We'll be glad to work with you, and we're looking for sponsors.
We'll take care of you, too. Yeah.
So please do that. And wishing everybody a wonderful holiday as we go into Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is a full fast. As I said, a lot of people do a lot of things to work at getting themselves clean. This is also known as the days of repentance, the days of awe, the feeling of God's presence eminent as it would have been in ancient days as well. It's our chance to come clean to God, and that is just so reinvigorating for our souls. It's a new year. The book is about to close on 5781. I hope 5782 is a much better year, a much safer year. Please stay safe, everyone. Please wear your masks, wash your hands, be careful, and have a great set of holidays. This has been Rabbi Shafir Lobb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast, and this has been Ask a Rabbi.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talking the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world on Alexa, Google Home, and worldwide on the TuneIn app.